All right. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to Co-op Curious, three-part mini course for the Co-op Curious. I'm Johan. I'll be your host and your instructor for today. And I want to invite you all to introduce yourselves in the chat. I want to invite you to share where you're coming from and what makes you co-op curious, so we can get a sense of what brought you here today. We're going to record this session. It's already being recorded to share out after the session and to benefit anyone who couldn't make it here today. So make sure, as Maggie said, you are off camera if you don't want to be captured, or you're not picking your nose or anything like that. Just get yourself ready, find a quiet space, get yourself on mute, and be ready to unmute when it's your time to speak. And let's try to learn some stuff and have some fun. All right. So this session is brought to you at no cost from the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast. As the name suggests, we fund cooperatives. We've been up to that for about 50 years. And more recently, the past 6 to 7 years, we've been providing more in-depth co-op business coaching, helping folks to connect to their neighbors and their ecosystem, service providers, and so on, and even providing educational content like this course. Ultimately, we're an investment opportunity to reallocate capital to places and enterprises that are more socially conscious. We believe cooperatives are that type of enterprise. So we love cooperatives. We believe cooperatives are the future, and we're happy to welcome you into this space and into this movement. I'm joined today by members of the learning team. I'm a member of the learning team here at the Cooperative Fund. My role is Ecosystem Strategy Manager, joined by Carolyn, Maggie, Carla, awesome folks who help us to serve co-ops and co-op curious entrepreneurs. Since 2019, we've been providing no-cost co-op business support to hundreds of co-ops and co-op curious entrepreneurs, and you could be next. If you're interested, as part of this course, we're offering that opportunity and encouraging it. You can find a link and get scheduled for a session at coopfund.coop/coaching. So I want to check the chat, see who's in the room real quick. We've got the Cultured Hygienist. Happy Wednesday. Empress Jenny of Embellish Emporium. Love that. Holistic, happy, healthy lifestyle practices. We've got Kia Harris with Ujama Collective in Pittsburgh, Historic Hill District. Black woman-led nonprofit co-op. Interested in learning more. We've got Varun. Welcome, Varun. Varun's our Co-op Navigator Fellow. Share some of their experience later. From Hartford, Connecticut, with Cooperate Connecticut, the People's Saturday School. Co-op Curious, because business as usual just wasn't working for me or People on the Planet. Got Gerald Ferguson from Pittsburgh, board member, the Greenwood Plan. We got Juliana, in the process of incorporating a worker-owned co-op. Excellent. You've got Karen there with the coaching link. So make sure you take advantage of that link and get the resources that we're here to offer you guys today. So keep introducing yourself in the chat as you're coming in, and as folks come in, let them know who's in the room and let them know that they're welcome. So drop where you're from, and we'll make you co-op curious when you're ready. So quick course overview. We'll be together for about 90 minutes until about 1:30, 80 minutes left. Initially, we'll run through a quick course overview. Then we'll explore what is a co-op. Many of you know what a co-op is, and it's what brought you here, but we'll dive a little deeper. And then we'll run through a tool, the Co-op Design Canvas, and that journey of using that tool and creating a co-op with the people you care about. So that's what's on the agenda for today. If there's anything else that you'd like us to cover feel free to drop that in the chat as well. Hopefully today is not too packed. We'll have 3 sessions to go over some of these topics together. And as I mentioned, we'll have other opportunities to interact. So today is Design Your Co-op, right? We're leveraging the Co-op Design Canvas. In May, we'll be discussing co-op business models, leveraging the business model canvas tweaked for co-ops. And in June, we'll be covering co-op ownership and governance. So these are the 3 sessions we have planned for you guys, but we also have other opportunities. We'll have an office hour. That'll be every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1:30. That's an hour where you can show up. You'll have the link on your calendar. It will come out in emails. You can just hop in that room. With me, it'll be a Google Meet, and you can get ongoing advisement on any course concepts. So the tools that we cover, things that I've said, things that you have questions on, it'll be first come, first serve technically, but if a lot of you show up, we'll turn it into a group coaching situation. We'll also have one-on-one coaching. There's a link. It'll also be in the slide deck, which will be sent out to you. So if you have a co-op emerging or existing, and you'd like some support, some guidance, feel free to click that link and schedule an appointment. And if you're looking to be connected to service providers or other co-ops who are doing similar things, maybe we can help out, reach out. So these are some of the services we're offering as an extension of this course and that we offer routinely all the time. We want to make sure you guys take advantage of it. And with that, let's begin. So the first question that we're going to explore together that I'm sure is on some of your minds is, what is a co-op? And I want to invite you in the chat to share how you would describe what a co-op is to a 5th grader, maybe a 7th grader. You know what I mean? The educational system we have. So how would you describe what is a co-op to a 7th grader, right? 13, 14-year-old person. What's the simplest way you could define that? Drop it in the chat, think about it for a minute, and then we'll see. Shady, a little bit, we got to get to schools, we got to hold them accountable. But yeah, what is a co-op? How would you define a co-op to 7th grader? Co-op is a group of people working together for a common purpose. Absolutely, in general, we're absolutely working together for a common purpose. Anyone else? We've got a collection of people, members in this case, organizations and ideals who work together to share resources for goals. Absolutely, sharing resources. We've got a collective of people who agree to collaborate and be in shared decision-making processes, decision-making that's important around a goal or set of ideas. We've got a group of people who wants to help one another to achieve a mutual goal, shared goal, mutual goal, love that. Collective operation and decision-making based on community values. Definitely love that. Community values are in there, operation, decision-making. Excellent. So let those guys come in. There's no wrong answers here. There's official definitions, but this is my favorite, right? It's not official. So I think of a co-op as a member-owned business, right? It's a business that has members, those members own it. It's usually democratically operated. When we hear one member, one vote, that's what they're talking about, right? Rather than how many shares you have in the company determining how many votes you have and therefore how much decision-making power. And it's for member benefit, meaning it doesn't exist just to benefit, a corporate owner or a nonprofit board or a customer, right? It's for the members. And that's really important because in our economic system here in America, which is supposedly a democracy, there is no democracy, right? You show up to work and you don't have a say, usually, right? You don't have a vote on how things go unless the boss or the owner creates those conditions. It could be very generous or could be very stingy. So we really don't have democracy in our economy, in our workplace. So a co-op allows that unique opportunity to manifest. And even, when we think about how we get our needs met, it's usually through the private ownership of business if it's not government. And so a co-op is an opportunity to move our economy forward rather than having businesses and corporations that are privately controlled, all the values accumulated at the top with a smaller and smaller concentration of people. And the stakeholders involved in that business or organization being so disconnected, a co-op helps to bring them together, right? You can think about the way we meet our needs, like food or housing, right? You can have a supermarket, and that supermarket has a owner, right? They're on the board of directors, they control it, they get the financial rewards. They've got staff who operate the business not democratically, right? They follow the rules. And then they've got their customers who are the beneficiaries. And the customers, the staff, and the owners are disconnected. They don't have a lot of empathy, right? So there's a lot of theft, right? The owners are stealing from the employees, the business is stealing from the customers, not providing the best service. It's antisocial. And it's the same case in nonprofit, right? Very developed nonprofit, Red Cross, whatever the case is. You've got your philanthropists who are on the board of directors who help fund the organization. You've got your staff, whether it's a CEO and program staff, some space between those two, and then beneficiaries, the people who live in the community that organization is meant to serve. They're disconnected. And so they make these decisions that aren't very valuable for everyone involved. They're so disconnected. And so co-op helps us to bring these members together, these different stakeholders, right? So a member-owned business, and the members could be operating to realize a variety of goals, whether it's housing. So the members in this case are residents, right? You live downtown or in the south end of your community, and maybe you have a business there, maybe you have a home there, but you don't own it. And the folks who own it, they're speculating. They're thinking when property values goes up, I'm going to sell it or raise the rents. Now you've got to move. You can't afford that. So you organize with other residents, 5 of you, 10 of you, and you create a business where you are the members and you're going to pay rent to yourself, right? Your housing cooperative. Maybe you're trying to access food, healthy food, halal food, and you realize there's nothing here, right? The supermarket won't locate their company here because there's not enough of us, or they don't think we have the income to support their business model. So now we're left without food or have to go to the corner store, right? So we start purchasing food together, right? We find a farmer, we start purchasing beef or whatever we want. Maybe we even get 1,000 people involved and we buy our own grocery store, and no, we're the customers who own a grocery store that we're shopping at. We're purchasing together, we're consuming these goods together. We're the members of a purchasing co-op or a food co-op. Or maybe we need to borrow money, right? We need to access credit. And so a credit union is created, right? A credit union is technically a co-op. However, a lot of the ones we see, they get real corporate, right? And it doesn't feel as though it's a true member benefit, but that's a co-op, right? We're members of an organization that we pool our money and we can borrow money from it. Perhaps we work at a design firm, right? High-end design, but we have no control over the projects we're taking on and how we approach projects. We realize we're not even paid as much as our coworkers. So 3 of us decide to get together and create a worker-owned cooperative, right? The members are the workers, right? We know we can do the work, right? We have a woman-led, worker-owned business design firm. Or you're a Salvadorian immigrant and you have inconsistent work. You realize your paychecks are inconsistent. Maybe there's some wage stuff. You can't complain to anyone. We know how to do the work. We're the ones doing everything every day. Maybe we can come together and create our own business. Perhaps it's even an opportunity to establish ourselves here in this country. Maybe you're a bunch of children sick of the school system I described earlier, not teaching us, right? So you wage a revolution and create a childcare co-op. More typically as parents, right? There are five of you, you're spending 1,500 a month on daycare if you're like me, and you're sick of that. So you guys come together, find an educator in a space, and you have a childcare co-op, right? Or your workers in a childcare facility, and you're sick of the rules that aren't really serving the children or the parents. So you create a worker-owned childcare co-op, many different things. Or finally, you're a business owner, or you produce food, you produce art, and you realize it's difficult to maintain a tractor on your own or an office space on your own or bookkeeping services. So you and other producers of food come together and buy a tractor. You're a producer co-op, right? Your individual businesses creating a separate business that you're members of, and you create to sell together or to buy together. So a co-op as a member-owned business can take on many forms. It's very it has a lot of applications that aren't limited to maybe the food co-op you see in your community or the worker co-op you're trying to start. Sometimes you can have multi-stakeholder co-ops where you have a farmers market and consumers, right? They're both involved in one co-op, right? Consumers and producers. You can have a multi-stakeholder co-op. So a co-op can take many forms, and it is helping to move our economy forward. Right now, ownership is at the top of the pyramid, and 99% of the population won't even get there. However, if you flip it on its head and allow shared ownership, now we have an entry point into this economy, moving it forward, accessing ownership through cooperation, right? Flipping this thing on its head, where democracy isn't welcome in the economy or the marketplace or the workplace, bringing it there, bringing your voice into that space and helping to evolve this capitalist system through shared ownership. So co-op is very important. We believe it is an important step in evolving this economy. And it's one of many forms that facilitate engagement and ownership of communities. And this is a graph shared by a friend, Anna Martina, in our fellowship. So I wanted to share a couple examples of other entities and enterprises that could facilitate community ownership and where co-ops sit. At the far right, you have employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs. So they facilitate ownership in that the owner of a company might think, how do I give my employees some engagement, some ownership, a stake in the future of this thing? And they create a retirement plan-esque type of strategy where folks can buy in and be owners of the company, and they retire to get a stake. That's ownership, but oftentimes it's not necessarily democratic ownership. You don't necessarily switch into a decision maker because you're part of an employee stock ownership plan, right? Compared to the worker cooperative where you are, and they're hybrids of both, right? Where you create a retirement plan and you have the worker co-op so that you have decision making in your everyday and you have a stake in the future value of the company. You go up to participatory democracy, we see democratic nonprofits, right? Worker self-directed nonprofits, member-directed nonprofits. Even if you take on a cooperative identity, you might not be cooperative in spirit. So there's a cooperative form recognized by the government, just like there's a nonprofit corporation and a for-profit corporation, and it's treated differently by the government and given different tax advantages and things like that. But there's also the spirit of cooperation that can come alive no matter what form you take on, right? So, nonprofits can be democratic more so than we're familiar. You've got time banks, ways to share folks' ability to engage in tasks, right? You've got mutual aid collectives, very participatory, not a lot of ownership. You've got community gardens, right? And consumer cooperatives, they're kind of in the middle, right? They're some of the more prominent examples we might see of a co-op, a food co-op, right? A lot of us don't even know they're co-ops, right? We just go to the healthy food store and they're supposed to be a co-op. So sometimes the identity, the form doesn't necessarily bring that spirit to life. And sometimes it's a different form, like a nonprofit or a for-profit organization, traditionally, that embraces the cooperative principles and values and allows that cooperative spirit to actually come alive. So Co-op is one tool among many to facilitate democracy in our economy and community ownership.
Hey, Johan.
Yep.
There's a comment in the chat. Our co-op mainly makes decisions by consensus. Would you still consider that democratic?
Let's open source that. I would say yes, and I would welcome other thoughts. I think consensus is good, right? When we get down to the co-op design canvas, we'll explore different decision-making models briefly, but you choose how you do decision-making, whether that means we're going to do 51% majority or 75%, 80% supermajority. Maybe we want to do consultative. We assign different people to make decisions and they consult with everyone and they come back and they make a proposal for the best option. Maybe it's unanimous. Everyone has to agree before we move forward. So there's no prescription, right? There are certain elements that you'll see, that one member, one vote thing, but the rest of that terrain, it's for you to discover, explore, and cultivate. Would you add anything to that, Karen? All right. So we're going to cover 3 ships that set sail on the sea of cooperation. First is membership. All right, so key principles. There are 7 cooperative principles that are espoused and put out there by a central authority, ICA, International Cooperative, and they've sourced different principles from different cultures and things and try to come up with these 3. And these 3, the first 3 pertain to membership, right? So voluntary and open membership. So open to all, without gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. So how will membership work in your organization? Who can be a member? A lot of the time, membership is kind of defined within the problem you're trying to solve, right? We want to have housing access, because I've never owned a home, and I never think I can. But working with other people, maybe I could. So we know the membership is for folks who are looking for a place to live in this geography, right? So that's going to give it some. But what else might membership mean? In the African-American community and diaspora community, you've got 7 principles as well, right? The Nguzo Saba principles practiced in Kwanzaa. And the first principle is umoja, unity. And that means unity in our race, in our community, in our people, recognizing in that particular community and culture how scattered and disconnected we'd become. So that was really important to bring Black people together, for example, in the case of Nguzo Saba. So sometimes you have to now apply a little nuance to some of these principles, right? Because obviously, if we're putting out international principles about we got to be open to all, it's pointing to a case where there's a lot of exclusive behaviors in our enterprise system, right? And in the case of the co-op, you don't want to have folks discriminating, right? Along with the regular economy who's discriminating, but maybe that group needs to find their way together. And a lot of the times, membership is contained by the problem that you're trying to solve. So think about it. How do you create voluntary and open membership processes, or how do you create an experience for a specific group of people? Democratic member control. So this is about members who are using the co-op, who are buying the services and the goods, make the decisions. Again, we don't have that democracy in our economy. So how do we bring it in? This is speaking to that. A corresponding principle, to use the same example of Nguzo Saba, is kujichagulia, self-determination, right? How do we speak for ourselves, define our problems for ourselves? Because a lot of the time, our problems are defined by outside authorities, right? The federal government may consider your neighborhood a food desert. And when you look at it, it's not that food can't grow here, right? It's that institutions like supermarkets or other types of food delivery channels don't want to come here, right? Or they haven't made the funding available to support that type of offering. And so you have food apartheid instead. And so you recognize, no, this is a systemic dislocation of services from these people. And that yields different responses, right? So you want to be able to define your own problem. You want to be able to define yourself. To go back to, again, the African American community or even racialized groups, we get called names that we didn't even decide, right? Minority, BIPOC. These names come perhaps from the government or academic researchers or folks who, have that level of investigative and labeling powers, and we take it on. But how do we democratically self-determinate? We've got member economic participation. So not only do we need to be able to become members and have a clear pathway and have a decision-making process, we also need to economically benefit and participate. And co-ops, members benefit in proportion to the business they conduct with the cooperative rather than based on how much capital invested. So we talked about that one member, one vote thing. In a corporate environment, the more shares you have, the more decision-making power, the more financial return you're entitled to. In the co-op, it's flipped, right? You get one member, one vote, and you also get, the more I use this co-op, the more I patronize it, the more of a return I'm entitled to of the surplus. So it's very different, right? The more I shop in the food co-op that I'm a member of, there might be some internal point system that can allocate a larger share of the surplus to me compared to another member who didn't. If I'm in a worker-owned co-op, the more time I put in over the year, that might entitle me to a different amount of the surplus than other members. And you can have internal systems that are equitable and so on to support that, right? But members benefit economically from the co-op, and members have decision-making powers. Another ship is entrepreneurship. So your members, the members have a problem, they come together, but they also have a business they need to run. And this is where the entrepreneurship comes in. So key terms I want you guys to think about is, what is an entrepreneur, right? It's a word that has entered into our vocabulary, but the way I define it for young people, I always think about young people, is someone who solves a problem for a group of people and gets paid for it, right? You find a problem, group of people have their problem in your community, in a different community, you try to solve that and create value for yourself, right? So an entrepreneur, you're a problem solver. In the context of the co-op, what are the problems we need to solve? Do we take initiative and solve those problems, and how do we get rewarded for that? Target market, that's the group of people with the problem you're trying to solve. In a co-op, the market and the membership may be the same thing. In the case of the food co-op, you're buying from yourself, the co-op that you own is selling to you and other people like you. A lot of times it could be different, right? You've got members in a worker-owned co-op, and they have to sell their services, whether it's landscaping or design, to a community of people who have that problem, right? Your market. You have to understand both of them. How connected are they? How different are they? And you also have this idea about value proposition. What value you're proposing to offer, right? What are the benefits that a target market can expect from your service or product? So you have to understand these three things to develop a business model to keep your business sustainable. Every co-op has two engines. You got your social engine, your membership, and your economic engine, right? Your business model. How do you move things forward for your customers? How do you move things forward for your members? How do you make membership sustainable? That's where governance comes in. How do you make the economic aspect of the enterprise sustainable? That's where understanding your value proposition and being able to generate a surplus or a profit comes in. So, it's very important, entrepreneurship. The third ship and final one before we go over the co-op design canvas is ownership. Again, in this country, ownership is at the top of a pyramid, and it's a money-making scheme usually, even though we know ownership is about much more than that, right? I need a house. If I'm going to own it, I have to come up with the money. Then I have to take care of it over time. And if I sell it, I get to reap benefits. So a lot of the time, ownership is about money in this context. And so unfortunately, we need to understand money, right? And sometimes if you look at a financial statement, which is a key tool to understanding how money is flowing through the co-op, it can look like a different language, right? This is Spanish. Maybe you speak Spanish, it's not so strange. Maybe you speak financial statements, so it's not so strange. And in this case, It's not about your intelligence. You are not stupid or smart because you can speak Spanish, right? It's something you learn, something you practice. And so the language of the financial statement is similar, right? It's not that you're smart, that you understand it, or you're dumb, that you don't. It's a language. So you have to make this language make sense to your people, to you. And so there's lots of different tools, ways to visualize this, right? What's this financial statement saying, right? It's telling us how much money is coming in, 575,000. It's saying that the cost of goods is around 50%, give or take, right? How much money are we netting? 100,000. That's 15% of how much money we've earned, give or take, or whatever the case is. So it's trying to communicate information about the business, information you need to improve the business to make it last. If you don't know how to move money from places that are not performing to places that are performing, or to get more value into things that we're doing, it's very difficult to own a business, right? You're going to be thinking like an employee, showing up and being told what to do. People may not show up with this capacity to truly own it because they don't have all the knowledge, they don't know how money is flowing through it, but we have to grow that capacity, right? Like learning a new language. So I'll leave it at that. And we're going to dive into this tool called the Co-op Design Canvas. So I want you to think for a minute, think about a time that you spent with other people trying to solve a personal problem, right? Was there ever a time that you had a problem in your life, in your community, and you had to work with other people to solve it? Take a minute to reflect on that. And then I want you to drop in the chat, what was that like? What were some of the opportunities and problems you encountered? What were some of the problems you encountered trying to serve a personal problem? Yes. Challenging holding all perspectives. Beautiful outcomes or voices are heard. How do you help people feel heard? How do you hold all the perspectives? So voice and vision, big. Shared goals and divergent methodologies. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Do we have a shared goal, right? I think I'm describing, uh, uh, you know, a pen like this, and you think I'm describing a pen like this, right? Very different scenario. Not having a shared understanding of the problem. Yes, big problem. Different skills, like levels of capacity, common needs, absolutely. So there are quite a few issues that come up when you try to work with other people. It happens since we were born into families, right? Not so easy. It happens in the school, the classroom, it happens in the workplace. It's actually not so easy to work with people under the wrong conditions. And one of the big wrong conditions would be not having a shared space to visualize what you're talking about. A lot of us are just communicating, and we don't actually speak in a way that shows other people what we're talking about. And so this tool helps us to do so. It helps us to have a clear understanding of the problems. It helps us to have a clear understanding of how we make decisions. Have you ever walked into a room and you're talking about an issue and someone says the decision and that's what it is? A million other people gave great ideas, nothing was moved forward on, and all of a sudden someone speaks and, okay, good, we're good, right? How are decisions making this group, right? And things like that. So a lot of important things to do when it comes to this tool. And it's just a design tool. It helps you think about how beautiful, how relevant this form, this social form is to the problem we're solving. So the first thing it helps you encounter is this problem. What is the unmet need or desire in your community? Again, if I'm looking for housing, right? Is my problem that rent is too damn high? Is my problem that my housing is insecure? This landlord wants to sell as soon as he sees the price goes up. Or is it just access? I cannot find a place to live in my community, right? What is that unmet need? You have 3 people in a room. We might be talking about, yeah, rent is unaffordable, but my real problem is I don't have community. I really want community, right? We're all talking about, oh, it's hard to find a place, but really, I want green space, right? I want a place where I can walk in the grass. So we all have different problems, right? And we don't necessarily articulate that in the midst of that conversation. But here we can. We can take turns, everyone can list out their problems, and we can say, which is the most painful problem, so that we know we're working on the same problem. Once we have that problem, that shared understanding of a personal problem that we're going to solve, now we can think about a cooperative solution. What can we do together that we cannot easily do alone? We're trying to access this housing. Are we going to buy a house? Are we going to buy land and make a house? Are we going to share a house? Love the enthusiasm of who's getting in there. Someone getting in there with the highlighter and creating green marks. You got you ready. We're gonna get to it, as I said. So what are we gonna do together, right? In a co-op context, you usually sell together, right? If you're farmers, you're trying to sell your grapes. But in a housing co-op, maybe there's room for that. Usually we buy together. It's cheaper when you buy in large quantities, right? Economies of scale. Maybe it's easier to make things together or share an asset like a tractor. And what's going to be different in the world when you succeed? So this is envisioning a shared future together. What is going to be different in the world because we have this house together, this housing co-op together, right? Okay, we have a home. So what? We have a place that we can raise our children safely. So what? We have a space that we can be our best selves in the world. We need to know what that North Star is. And that's going to be your shared future that you're trying to create. It clearly captures the problem and it clearly shows what the cooperative solution is. So none of us are lost and, astray on the path to really creating this thing, right? Creating a shared vision over here. For C, now we're getting into the details of who are our members, right? Who are going to organize together to meet this need? Is it going to be individual business owners? Is it going to be individuals who buy together? Is it going to be individuals who work together, workers? And how will they resolve conflict? That's key. You want to get that in there from the beginning. And then you get over to participation. Now we're getting more in depth. How will the member participate with the co-op? What are you going to be asked to contribute? Is there a one-time buy-in, right, to help fund the needs of the co-op, the capital? Are you needing to provide labor to do the work? If it's a housing co-op, helping to fix this fence and do the development of the building? Or is it just time? We're going to do community events, right? That doesn't necessarily produce funds to cover the cost of the building, but somebody's got to do it, right? Plan events and things like that, community events, a potluck. Or is it ideas? We need ideas for how we fund this thing, for how we build this thing. What are you asking members to contribute? Additionally, what will members be entitled to receive? So they got to give that. What are they going to receive? Do we have a situation where folks receive money? What are the conditions under us getting our money back? If we're going to work on co-op, sure, we might produce a profit or a surplus. What are the conditions? How do we send money back? What about information, right? Do we, if we're in a housing co-op, share everyone's rents? Or if a co-op share everyone's pay stub, right? Share the financial reports. What do we want to share to everyone? And who do we share it with? Will members be entitled to make decisions on every decision? Will members be entitled to take on every role? Can anyone be a board member, the executive, this or that? Right? How will decisions be made? As we discussed before, many different decision-making models, right? Is it a majority, 51%, right? There's 5 of us, as long as 3 agree is good, or there's 10 of us, as long as 6 agree we're good? No, we like supermajority. We want 8 of us to agree out of 10. Is it going to be consensus or consent? Consensus meaning we're in agreement. Consent meaning, I can live with it, right? Unanimous, everyone agrees. Sociocracy, holocracy. There's a lot of tools out there, and you're going to have to study them and figure out what's best for you and adopt them to your needs. And finally, who will decide what, right? Will all members be involved in every decision? Maybe if there's only 3 of us, but if there are 1,000 of us, maybe we need to elect a board or a committee or whatever. or maybe workers need to have autonomy over their particular line of business. And then we get to the bottom two, allies, right? Who outside of this cooperative needs for success? Who are your stakeholders, right? Who can be your service providers or your suppliers? And then with assets, not just what equipment is needed, right? We need a house, maybe we need a couple of tools to fix the house if we're a housing co-op. What are assets, right? Assets in the sense of the people that we have in our community, right? I know a lot of people in this community. That's my asset. You really know this community well. It's history, another asset. I have a Rolodex, right? I can call my cousin. He's an accountant. What are the assets in our community that we can leverage, not just in terms of physical assets and equipment, but the social assets, the social capital? So laying these things out creates the condition to more effectively discuss and socialize these ideas. And you iterate, right? You develop deep empathy with the problems people are really trying to respond to. What's a priority? You think about how we can work together. You ideate in how we're making the world better, how we're making our needs, how we're meeting our needs. And you iterate. You figure out how to perfect the process of member participation. So that's the co-op design canvas. Now I'd like to invite up Varun, Co-op Navigator Fellow, to share a little bit about their experience creating a co-op. And, things don't always go as you expect. So I think Varun's a perfect person for this. So I want to invite you off mute. And maybe we need to do a spotlight thing, but we'll start with just your voice.
Yeah. So this is what not to do, Mostly
All right.
kidding.
No problem. Tell us about your experience. How'd you wrestle with the problem and solution phase, and how did it change over time?
Yeah, so hi everyone. It's so funny to be here on this end because I think I'm so often on the other end of this, just watching and taking furious notes at these webinars. So thank you, Johan, for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I mentioned in the chat, I'm from Hartford, Connecticut, and a few years ago, back in 2020, I was working as a high school teacher. And my background before teaching high school was community organizing. And so I really, believe in political education, that we need to have a strong, we need to be informed about, the kind of issues impacting our communities and also the tools to resist our systems of oppression and to organize and build a new world. And so a group of us in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic got together and decided we want to create space for political education around abolition during a time when most people were very isolated from each other and we weren't so we wanted to create that space for political education for activists of all ages. And that was kind of the birth of the People's Saturday School, which is a project that I've been working on over the past 5 years and trying to develop as a cooperative. And it hasn't been an easy journey, but yeah, still going through this process. And I'm happy to share a little bit more about what we're up to and kind of some of the roadblocks we faced along the way. But yeah, that was really the main need, was both like the need for political education for activists in the community, but also a need for community and support for liberatory educators, for those of us who ourselves are struggling, whether we work in schools or nonprofits, are often being exploited or are dealing with burnout. Yeah, so those are the two main needs we were looking to solve through forming this cooperative.
Yeah, that's a major need in every community, it seems today, so relevant. So you have this problem, right? A lot of us are burnt out, we need community, and a lot of folks need political education. What made you decide that a cooperative solution was the thing to do?
When we started, we weren't thinking about a cooperative at all. So we came out, we emerged as a volunteer-based collective. We didn't have any, most of us, we're not entrepreneurs. We were teachers working in schools, or working in nonprofits. And so we didn't have any sense of the business model. We just saw the need and we wanted to solve it. And so we just jumped into action and we formed a democratically organized collective and started designing and curriculum and teaching. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later when I was personally leaving a job at a nonprofit where I felt I was being exploited and was feeling really burnt out, and started to learn more about cooperatives, that I realized, oh, this is like, if this is something I want to do to sustain myself as a worker, maybe I need to be thinking about how to use the cooperative model as a vehicle to sustain myself, and for those of us who are doing this work, for us to sustain ourselves so that we can keep doing this in the long term and not just just doing it on borrowed time, or doing it donating our time, but how do we make it more manageable for us to stay in this, to keep doing the work long term. So that's why we decided on cooperatives, and we were inspired by people, and I'll say I'm inspired by groups like Aorta, the Spring Up. There's a number of different, the Stoke Collective, learning more and more about different cooperatives in my sector and realizing that that is a pathway, and we don't have to just work in a job at a traditional nonprofit, or work independently as a freelance consultant, which is what a lot of people end up doing when they leave the workforce, or a traditional workforce. And that also was something I realized I didn't want to do. I didn't want to work alone. I couldn't manage doing this work on my own. I needed help.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. I love how you put it, working on borrowed time. A lot of times we're cooperating informally, solve small problems, but we don't realize this could be a way of meeting our needs. Like, we could manage our households by working together. In this case, resisting burnout. So that's excellent. Maybe the last piece here is, when you guys decided we're gonna work together to respond to this need, and we're gonna become members of this co-op, what was the pain point you encountered? What were some of the pain points, and how did you overcome them around member participation? How did you design that experience for your members? What was challenging about that?
How much time do we have?
Well, 5 minutes now. Okay.
One of the main pain points that I've struggled with was, I had already quit my job, my full-time job. So I was fortunate. Again, I work, I should be, to full transparency, I also work with, thanks to CFNE, I have this fellowship, the Co-op Navigator Fellowship, which has given me the opportunity to work part-time for another local organization doing co-op ecosystem development as a navigator. So that provided me some level of economic stability, but I was still, I had already quit my full-time job, and I was ready to go. I was kind of, had my own personal sense of urgency, that I was like, I need to figure out how to pay my bills, and majority of the people that I was at the time trying to develop the cooperative with were, majority were still working full time in other jobs, and were kind of, again, we only had had less time and energy to give to the project. And so figuring out how do we're interested in the mission, believed in the mission, but weren't sure actually if they wanted to make a living as working for the co-op, or were they, in co-op terms, like, were they just interested in being advisors or being kind of supporters, or were they actually interested in being members of the co-op and making that one of their primary ways of earning income? And so that wasn't clear to people at the beginning. And I wasn't clear in asking what people's long-term goals were. I think I just was excited, and I was excited to have a team of people that shared my excitement. But I think some of the misalignment around our goals, our timeline for developing the project, I think started to surface pretty quickly, and led to some conflict that, because I was like, I was ready to go. And I think it wasn't theoretical to me. This was like this is my livelihood, not just something I believe in. I wanted to actually build the business now. And I think that I realized how this takes time. And I think finding the right team of people that are on the same page, not just in terms of their alignment with the mission, but also in terms of their capacity and their ability to dedicate the time to both doing the internal and the external work of developing the business, and also just in this case teaching. And I think I'm still trying to find that team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, a few more important things you mentioned there, you had a sense of urgency and wanted this to become something that could be full-time. So you're ready to be a full member and design that process with other potential full members, but everyone wasn't there. So how do we recognize and account for that, right? Are there different levels of membership, right? Shallow pools of cooperation, deeper pools. We can bake that in.
Yeah.
If we recognize that, that can avoid a lot of frustration, because now we can think, what does a shallow versus a deep level of membership mean? Was required as far as that participation, right?
Right.
What should be their buy-in, right? What should be their responsibility as far as labor and things like that? Can we account for it to support someone who can't fully be a member yet? Maybe they don't have the resources to do that full buy-in, right? And create some type of pay scale. So it informs a lot of these other things when you start going through the process, right? It is to create a shared vision of what this future could be. That's the
Yeah.
purpose of this tour. We're still in the design phase. So I love that. That's a really important insight. How do you know those things?
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
we didn't have any sense of that you could have membership tiers at the beginning. I think my initially I thought you were either all in or all out, and I think that I've learned the hard way. That's more, co-ops there's not one right way of doing creating a governance structure within the cooperative. Yeah, and you have to get creative. So.
Excellent. So I'll invite you to share any final advice to folks as we set up breakout rooms. Everyone's going to get a chance to explore this. What's one thing you think will be very helpful to consider as they're designing their co-op in closing?
Yeah, I think just I mean was kind of learning as I was going, and I think I realized I'm really am still passionate about worker cooperatives, but I think part of the I think I would encourage folks to explore what is the right co-op model for your business. Is it, and we kind of reached a point where we weren't sure, are we actually a platform or a producer cooperative versus a worker cooperative? Are we a consumer cooperative? Are we multi-stakeholder? We're still trying to figure that out for ourselves. I think yeah, there's and yeah, and I just think it's yeah, I think we're also, I would encourage folks to look into different styles of democratic governance. So I think at the beginning we made a mistake of feeling like we had to make every decision through consensus, or at least I would say that was a mistake for us, because I think certain decisions, I think, I'm studying sociocracy, and we're trying to implement sociocracy within our cooperative right now, which makes decisions primarily through consent, not through consensus. So it's still democratic, but it is, I think, also, in some ways, a more efficient way of making decisions, especially once you have established clear roles or clear division of responsibility within your cooperative, so that people who can be more empowered to make decisions about the domains that they have authority over, in order to make sure that you're making progress and you're not spending all your time in meetings trying to make decisions about things that maybe are not under the scope of your role within the cooperative. That can actually really hurt morale if people are showing up to meetings where they're like, I actually don't like, you decide the brand, the branding, or the key messaging, or you decide what platform we want to use for the website. Like, I don't want to be part of that decision. And I think creating that structure where there is still a sense of we're working together, but people are able to play to their strengths and work. Yeah, and I think that requires the last thing I'll say is that just requires a level of trust, and there's no shortcuts to developing trust. And I think that at the end of the day, something that they talk about in sociocracy, and something also they talk about in the co-op world, is that you can have the best structure in the world, you can have the best business plan, but ultimately if you're not practicing cooperation like in at an interpersonal level, like if you're not communicating with each other, if you're not cultivating trust with each other, like none of that actually it won't work without it. And I think that it's easy to get caught up. I know I was really obsessed with finding the right structure and making sure we had the right tools and systems, and all those things matter. But there is also a human aspect of this that is about am I, yeah, do I want to cooperate with you? Am I willing to let go, release some of my control? Am I willing to check my own ego in this process? And I think that was a really humbling journey for me in trying to start this cooperative, and I'm still learning. So I'll stop there. But thank you, Johan.
No, thank you. So many gems. I really appreciate that. And so with that, I want to invite us to, collect what was shared by Varun. Thank you, Varun. Salutes, give Varun a hand. Remember, in your own experience designing this, we're going to break out into the groups. If you're interested in worker co-ops, you can join that group, housing, producer, consumer. And when you get in there, you can do whatever you want. As long as you honor what we just heard. How do you create trust, right? You make the implicit explicit, right? You make it visible. You give up some control. Go through the process as best you can. You're gonna have 10 minutes. Some of us will float around and see how it feels to really unearth some of your assumptions and make visible your implicit tendencies of controlling things. How do you make that shared and socialized? So the link is in the chat. Breakout rooms are set up. Let's launch them. We're gonna do 10 minutes. So I assumed that was not enough time, which is good, right? You guys probably getting busy and had to shift gears, right? We're running until 1:30 today. So there's more of this, right? We'll have 3 sessions together, and every week you can join the office hour for some group coaching, or maybe you can have some one-on-one time with Carla if you have a co-op already and you're trying to get that established. As producers, yeah, we figured it all out. So I'm going to open up a minute just for anyone to share some of the things that came up, if they think they'll be helpful for everyone else, or questions that you weren't able to get to. And the end, we could probably explore them a little bit more. So just giving you the opportunity to share anything that came up that you think could be helpful. Any issues you were wrestling with. Insights. Yes, it was limited. It was limited.
Yeah, thank you. I can just share from our group, we only got to go into the second portion of talking about the solution. One of the things that happened was we were deciding on how to even approach it as a group. So that was interesting, just figuring out. I had suggested that we could use our cooperative as a model. But because we are a cooperative that's creating many cooperatives, we explored the question of, should we unpack more, because there's so many layers. And I honestly feel like unpacking more would have been helpful. But again, because we didn't have the time to do it, we kind of ventured back towards just focusing on one particular issue, which was the issue of food. So that's where we landed, and we didn't get to go any deeper.
Right, to me, that's good. That's what you're wrestling with when you're trying to create a co-op a lot of the time, and it's not going to go quick. It doesn't have to be slow, but you're going to have to choose your battles or choose your starting point. Sometimes we want to create a multi-stakeholder cooperative that's going to solve every problem in our community: housing, food, employment. But we got to choose one, because time is limited, right? We're going to have to get started to keep momentum going. And it's usually about finding that thing that is equally painful, or at least approximately painful, to all of us to get started. So time is always going to be something you're wrestling with. You can spend a year, 3 years, but 10 minutes won't cut it.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm going to talk from Sakai's computer. We're here at Ujima Collective in Pittsburgh. And I just wanted to name that time component is so important, because we have different learning styles, different communication styles. And I'm a person of many questions, because things don't always come right away. and there's a depth of how I'm able to understand information. So if I think of being in a room with many people that take their time to process information, it tells me that we must, at the very beginning, if we're going to create a co-op and be in a practice together, we must make intentional time to really go through the process and know that challenges will arise, and make time to engage that practice of restoration and resolution, and just making space for inquiry to arise so that no one is leaving the room with their stomach queasy, uncertain if they asked the wrong question or the right question, but doing that interpersonal work. So tending to the land first, tending to the relationships first, so that we could actually be in the practice together. That's what really was amplified for me, is like that relational component is so important and so nourishing to be in the process together.
Excellent. Yes, you are gonna have to give yourself time and set up a space where people can, you know, have their voice be expressed in the room, feel like their voice is gonna be heard, and you might have to take it one section at a time. You know, in the Babylonian system, we're trying to get everything done in an hour. It's not gonna happen, okay? You've got to give yourself time for this process. So I see a comment in the chat from Gerald. Yeah, I love tending to the land first. Appreciate that. We can get into this as far as a question and how it relates to the business model and governance, maybe share some examples. If you want a deep dive, we're not going to cover it. You can show up to office hours. You can book a slot with myself or a co-op coach if you do have a group that you're trying to work with, and we can explore that at an in-depth level, at least, you know, the design phase for the business model and the ownership model. And I can show you examples as well. All right. So I'm going to move into the last section, just sharing what this journey might mean for you and what an ideal version might look like, even though there is no ideal version. So in a perfect world, you're going to start off with problem finding. You're going to have to ask, what is the right problem? We might think we need to get money to this community, but it might be that we need to make them literate and connected to the services that exist in their environment, right? We got to find the right problem. So you got to go through that process. What is the shared problem? What is the right problem underneath the issues that we're experiencing, right? So a lot of time we jump to solution finding. We need to do problem finding, get empathy. All right. Then we might get into community organizing, whether that's a founding committee, a steering committee, and you start creating some project teams, right? Then you might get into some community learning, exploring different co-op models, creating a study circle and really learning who's trying to solve this problem before. Do we need to invent the wheel? What is unique about our thing? What is shared? And in community building, what are the tools we're going to use to invite people in, right? Outreach, recruitment, agreements. So this is membership, right? You have this shared problem. Now let's create an experience where membership is meaningful. After that, now we're getting a little external. We're looking into who are our customers, if they're different from the members, right? Market research, prototyping ideas, our business formation goals, incorporation in terms of legal incorporation, whether you're a nonprofit acting cooperatively, an LLC, or traditional for-profit corporation acting cooperatively, or a cooperative corporation recognized by your state. Maybe there's others. What is that incorporation, right? A lot of the times people think that is the most important thing, but that comes after. You got to get that spirit first, and then you can create a form that supports it, as well as branding, right? Website, logo, those things that people will identify you as. And then capital access. A lot of times you start with member contributions, right? We are the people who need this. We're going to contribute towards it. And then maybe we get into some pre-sales, some crowdfunding, some grants, and some loans. And that piece is speaking to the marketplace, membership and marketplace. How do we respond to both dimensions and both needs in that place? Where are they overlapping? And then, of course, you get to build out an hierarchy. Fortunately, it's more like this. This is the experience you're likely to have, right? Iterative, going back and revisiting things. We had our membership, but we need to change that based on the type of work we need to do, right? It gets a little wonky. So it's not a perfect process, we really need to think about how to revisit some of these ideas over and over again. So given that, what's your next step, right? You didn't get to design your co-op and the tool, but I hope you start thinking, based on what my hopes and aspirations are for my community and my co-op, what is the next step, right? Where am I? Do we know the problem? Is it clear what everyone's idea of the problem is and how painful it is for everyone, and that we have a shared problem? Is it clear that our membership is like this, but we don't have an idea of the business element, right? We need to get into the marketplace. Where are we at? Regardless to how your journey looks, I want to offer up a framework of thinking about this. How do we get to cooperatively ever after, right? The end of the story there. Initially, you've got a pioneer, right? The founder, co-founder, they see a problem, they set off to explore it. Then you're looking more like a circus, right? You've got talented people, they're flipping, they're doing twirls and things, right? They've got lots of skills to contribute, but a little disorganized, right? We got a steering committee. Now we try to professionalize a little bit, right? We're starting to formalize certain processes and, organize our documents. And then we get a little standard, right? We run into trouble, right? We start organizing things so that we're thinking the same, consistently producing results. And now we have to kind of think outside the box, right? Because that's who we're trying to be. And eventually, I invite this reshift, right? This is the future. This is where we need to get to. Rehumanization, right? What do we feel, right? Do we feel powerful? Do we feel as people engaging in an enterprise to meet our needs, or manage our households, and ultimately to autonomy, right? What are we going to do to create change in this world, right? How do we feel like leaders? So inviting you that no matter to think about this process, regardless of the form you take, how do you get to cooperatively ever after, right? How do you help that spirit of cooperation to emerge in everyone and to buoy the form? So should you start a co-op? Well, is there a self-defined problem, right? It's painful, it's personal, it's unmet. A lot of the times people come to me and they're trying to solve a problem for other people. That's good for entrepreneurship. That's good for responding to systemic issues in terms of nonprofit leadership and community engagement. But with a co-op, we're meeting our own needs. We're coming together to meet our own needs. So is it a painful, personal, unmet need that is shared? Is it experienced by a community of people? At least 3 people who like each other. It could be just you in the beginning, then you find your first follower or whatever the case is, and now you put a flyer out and maybe you get more. But you got to like each other, right? You got to create sweet memories. It's not easy to do this work, so you want to find people who are going to do it as a labor of love and who like to be around you. Are you willing to share responsibility, rewards, and power, right? Is it the case that no one wants full control, or that they're exclusively profit driven, right? If that's the case, you're gonna have an issue, right? Someone's gonna want to make decisions that don't align with probably your true intentions, right? And if someone wants full control, they're probably not best suited to create a co-op. Nothing's wrong with wanting that. You have to think on the spectrum of enterprise. I see this systemic issue, right? People don't have homes, right? Homelessness. And I know I need a lot of people to help solve that problem, right? So I'm gonna take the nonprofit approach, volunteer hours, donations, versus the for-profit approach, where I have a really interesting idea for a unique type of tiny house, right? It's proprietary. I want to control it. I want to design it. Nothing's wrong with that. But now you need to take that for-profit approach, that proprietor approach, right? Or there's a community of people with a problem and they're willing to work together, the cooperative approach. And you can embed the cooperative spirit in any one of those approaches. So if that's the case, get started. You've got a self-defined problem, right? It's personal, it's painful, it's experienced by a community of people who like each other, maybe at least 3. It's okay if it's just you, but you got to find a community. If you're alone, that's your first step. Articulating a problem that other people have, and you're willing to share and able to share responsibility, rewards, power, which is that ability to create change or to decide what happened. So if you're trying to get started, I would look at the tool and focus on that envisioning a shared future step. What is going to be different in the world because our co-op exists? What is the problem it's here to solve, and how cooperation is best suited to solve that, right? That shared future. We need to see ourselves past the problem into a space that is more compelling and forward moving. And you got to organize your community. Initially, you start as a community, people who care about each other. No one, is inessential, right? Everyone's needed. However, when you shift into an organization, now you've got roles and responsibilities, and you've got to hold people accountable. You have to make that shift. And it's not always easy to shift from being a community to being an organization, right? That's how you organize your people. You create roles, you create responsibilities, you create accountability systems, right? Have to make that shift. A lot of us stay communities trying to be organizations. And then you grow your people for power. Once people take on those roles, they know what their responsibilities are. Maybe they don't have all the knowledge. You get them that knowledge. Maybe they don't have the confidence to believe they can create change or bring their voice into the room. They have to gain that power. That's the journey we're on, right? Creating in everyone to believe that they can create change in their community. They can control their life. They can have a voice and participate in the systems that help them meet the needs of their household. So kind of the final advice. And if you want to get started, don't be afraid to reach out to us. You can go to our website. We've got playlists on YouTube, a monthly newsletter. You can also attend our office hour, and you can schedule a call with a co-op coach. And if you just want to talk, you can reach out to me. I have a calendar. We can have a one-on-one. So the last thing is just remember, we have 2 more sessions and weekly office hours. The next session will be Wednesday, May 28th on Co-op Business Models, 12 to 1:30 p.m. and then in June. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and for those who can stay and have questions, I'll take it a little bit. Otherwise, I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day.